guys, just gonna give you a little demo on something I decided to add to this build, which is, if you look carefully in here, you can see there are spark plug boots in the engine and on the distributor cap. Now, they are not hard to make, and installation is a little bit of a pain, but once you get them in there, they do look pretty good. One of the interesting bits of this engine is that it's got the spark plugs molded into the spark plug bores, and those make great mounting points for the boots, so you don't really have to drill into the engine the way you normally would. I had the same little the terminals on the distributor cap were also molded pretty nicely, so I didn't have to do any drilling so far. And if this works out, it'll make doing the spark plug wires on this engine pretty easy. Now, as you can see, I got all the boots already on the distributor cap. I have all the boots installed on the engine on this side, and now we're going to put the boots on this side. Now, I make the boots using some heat shrink tubing. I heat it up, shrink it down to the proper diameter that I need, and then I just slice the boots off in the size that I need, or slice the heat shrink tubing in the size that I need to create the boots. Okay, here we go. First thing I'm going to do is put tweezers in to expand one side of it, make sure that it fits that molded in spark plug securely. And then going to flip it around so that the expanded side is facing the engine. Have it here. Get a small dab of super glue on that boot. There we go. And then we just attach it to the spark plug, molded in spark plug, and there we go. Another boot firmly installed there. Now let's just clean out the boot here, making sure that we can get our wire in there. Okay, that's a second boot done. And there we go, guys. There go all of our boots installed on the engine. All that's left now is to put in the spark plug wires, which might be a little bit of a challenge because I'm not sure what color wires I have left. I got a little yellow here, but I'm not sure if I have enough to do the yellow. Got a little red here. I want to do something other than black on here. So black will be my last resort, if I, depending on how much of this yellow and red I have. Looks like it might be time to be ordering some more from Auto Car Garage. Alright, now we're going to keep going with this build, and we're going to be working on the spark plug wires. After installing all of the boots, we're now going to have to drill them out just slightly, just to widen them up just a little bit, because sometimes when you put the boots in, the super glue shoots up into it, and it's now causing me trouble with installing the wires. So what I'm going to do now is take my little pin vise drill, and I'm just going to widen up all of the boots where the wires are going to be inserted. So that's going to be our next step. So let's get going with that, and we'll just keep doing this until we get done. Alright guys, after drilling out all of the grommets just to make a little more room, I started installing my spark plug wires. So I've got just about all of them done except for two. I'll show you how I did that on the last two. But first, funny story. I started putting the wires in and found out that I didn't have enough wire. So, what was I gonna do? How's this thing gonna run with only 7 spark plug wires in it? So, then I remembered at my Starfleet Motors display, I have this Pontiac V8, which came from the Knight Rider kit, if I'm not mistaken. No, was it the Knight Rider kit? Yeah, I think it was Knight Rider kit. And I had wired this one up as a display of an engine that's being dismantled at the shop. If you saw my Starfleet Motors video, then you'll know where this came from. So there's my last remaining yellow wire. I just yanked it off of this engine after all this engine's already being dismantled and was pulled out of a car and probably going to be rebuilt at some point. And it is a Pontiac engine, so from one Pontiac engine to another one, we are going to swipe a wire from this engine for this one to get this GTO running. Just glad I decided to wire this one with yellow wire. Okay, now that that little almost catastrophe is averted, I'm going to show you exactly what I do with the wire. Now, I showed you guys how I drilled out, how I installed the boots, and then I just widened up the opening of the boots, basically installing, let me see, this one's going here, so we need our last wire here. Installing these spark plug wires as easy as installing the wire into the boot. Let me make sure you guys can see this. Okay, let's just straighten this wire out a little bit. And I know it's kind of hard to see this stuff. We're going to install the wire right into, kind of hard to do that while looking through a camera as I hit the camera. Right into the boot there. Let's see, we may have to drill this one out. I don't know if I got to that one. There we go. Alright, we have the wire in the boot, and basically we're just going to, first I still need to straighten out this wire a little bit more. Alright, let's insert the wire into the boot, like so, and then we're going to run it right back to the distributor. I'm going to check our spot here, and there we go. Okay, now that we know that it's long enough, now we just have to install it into the remaining open boot on the distributor, which means first thing we have to do is get some super glue on it. And then we can insert it right into the last remaining boot. And we are in. Okay, guys, so here we go. We have the wire in our last remaining boot. We have our last few wires here to actually install into the other boots, and then this is going to be done. Alright guys, here we are with the finished product. We have our spark plug wires installed, and you can see all the boots are in there. Our boots for the distributor is in there, and they came out really, really nice. I'm really happy with the way these came out. It was a little troublesome just getting everything to line up on the distributor itself, And then when I was done, I was test fitting the supercharger, and I realized that the supercharger butts up right up against the distributor. And now that we have all of our wires and boots and everything in there, it was actually pushing up on the supercharger. Because now there's a lot more stuff there than there's supposed to be. So I realized I was going to have to make a little bit of a modification in order to leave the wiring and the boots and everything in there. So what I did was I trimmed the rear supercharger cover. I opened it up so that it would go around the distributor and the wires as opposed to resting on them. And that allows us to line up our supercharger perfectly on the block, and you cannot even see where I cut it. So you can see the supercharger sits perfectly on the block now, and everything's right behind it, and the distributor and wires cover up the opening so that you'll never even know it's there. So don't tell anybody. It's going to be our secret. And we have our supercharger sitting beautifully right on the block. So now we're going to attach the supercharger, glue it all in, and move ahead with the engine construction. Alright, first thing we're going to do is let's just scrape off. If I can find here it is. We're going to be scraping off a bit of the chrome on here because we want to have to make sure we have a good surface for the glue to stick to, and give the supercharger right there. Now the supercharger is going to have 3 pins that it's going to slot into. We already talked about that. It's mechanically keyed to go in only one way. Let's just take some of the... So we have our 3 pins, 1, 2, and 3. Match them up to the supercharger, and it should sit perfectly now that the distributor is not getting in the way. So now we have the basis of our 64 GTO engine done, and that looks really nice. Now I went ahead and I coated the supercharger with Tamiya's semi-gloss clear, and that kind of dulled down the chrome just a little bit to give you a much more realistic shine. And then I applied some Tamiya panel line paint, because you know how much I love my Tamiya products, and highlighted all the details, as well as attached the carburetors, which are painted with Model Master's green gold. Again, highlighted the details there with the Tamiya panel line paint, and then topped it off with some Testors silver, metallic silver, for the chrome accents. Now let me give you a good close-up look at all the spark plug wires and the boots. Everything is all there. So the engine is getting close to being complete. Now what we have left is the belt drive assembly and the velocity stacks, and we are pretty much done with the engine. So we're going to keep going with this. Okay guys, here we have the just about completed engine. The only thing missing are the velocity stacks, because they have to have a little bit of the dull coat put on them, so I can knock the chrome back a little bit so it matches everything else on here. But here you can see the superchargers installed, the belt assemblies installed. Now this car came with the ability to build this engine 2 different ways, either stock or this wild custom supercharged version that's here. I'm going to put up the assembly instructions for the engine right about now, so you can see that you start with the same basic layout of the block and transmission, and then the differences are going to come in the stock intake assembly, or the Street Machine version, which involves installing the entire supercharger assembly, and that's where they're going to change, where they're going to differ. The entire block, water pump, heads, valve covers, exhaust manifolds, they're all the same. But if you choose to do the supercharged version like I did, then the next step in the engine build, which is gonna be here, take a look at it right here. You're going to have to pick the Street Machine version of the fan belt, because if you look at the stock version, you only have 1, 2, 3 pulleys. The Street Machine version, I think, has about 5 pulleys on it, which includes everything that's used to drive the supercharger. So it is quite a bit different, as you can see the diagrams here on the instructions of the difference between the two. So if you're going to use the supercharger, you got to make sure you use the same belt assembly. But it really is a great looking little engine. I mean, if you take a look at that, look at the supercharger. If you choose to leave it in chrome the way I did, and then I chromed the supercharger drive assembly, the belts, the all of the pulleys are detailed out, the alternator pulley, the power steering pump. You can just make out the chromed water pump pulley behind the belt, behind the fan. And this thing is so nicely detailed that it even includes the clutch assembly for the fan. That's actually a pretty neat little detail that they had molded as a separate part. But you can see here that it really does make a pretty nice assembly. I mean, and it's ripe for more detailing. I mean, you can add fuel lines, you can add linkages, all sorts of stuff. There's plenty of room on this engine to do all of that. I don't know if I'm going to go that far with it, but I'm very happy with the way the spark plug wires came out. You can see the distributor cap there I painted with the tan color, which is, I found a little reference photo of the distributor caps on these cars were a tan color, and I thought that looked a little more interesting than just a regular black or red. Still have to paint the oil filter. I forgot to paint the oil filter on both engines. I gotta go back and do that. But you can see here, I mean, take a look at the detail on the block. It really is, all of the bolt detail is on there. On the inside, the supercharger detail is really, really nice. Even the belt drive assembly has a really nicely molded piece. This is really, I don't know how well known, or actually I don't know how popular this particular kit is, but it is really a fantastic model so far of a GTO. And even though I'm going a little bit out of my wheelhouse and building a custom version as opposed to a stock version, because I really like stock production models, this thing looks great. Now, I really wish it brought brackets for the power steering pump and the alternator. I was thinking about making them, but then I just decided, nah, it's going to be a little too much effort for that. So, I'm not going to do that on this model. But, even without it, it just looks great. I mean, look at all the detail when you look at the front of the engine and how cleanly molded everything is. I mean, it really, really does make a nice engine. So, that's it, guys. That's it for the second engine in this double build that I'm doing here. So, we're going to end this video here. And the next thing we're going to start on is probably the interiors of the two cars. Because it's going to be fun building the two different ones and just seeing, you know, how they match up build-wise. One being a X-Snap-Together kit, and the other one being a really nicely made, fully detailed kit. So, join me on the next episode, guys, because this is only getting better. Alright. Remember, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. That way you'll know when the next episode comes up, because it's going to be interesting to see the comparison between these two, the builds on these two type of cars. So come on along for the ride. All right. I'll see you guys on the next one.